How to make hay for dummies. Now before I explain how I do this, I want to remind you guys of something. We all have different backgrounds, we all come from different circumstances, and we all live in different parts of the world, which means we all do things differently. So just because I do something differently than you do something doesn't mean that I'm farming wrong, and it doesn't mean that you're farming wrong. So remember that before you leave a stupid comment saying that I'm farming wrong just because I ted hay different times than you do. Please remember that. When making hay, there are three main things: cut the hay, dry the hay, and bale the hay. In today's world, there are three machines that you can cut the hay: a sickle bar, a hay bind, and a disc bind. A sickle bar is a cutter bar that moves back and forth really quick. They're small, simple machines, and they were invented a long, long time ago. Hay binds have a cutter bar, just like a sickle bar, with a reel that pulls the hay through the machine, and then often some sort of mechanism in the back, like rollers, that will crimp the hay and squeeze the moisture out. And then we come to today, where we have these modern machines called disc binds. Disc binds have these little disc thingies called turtles with these little knives on them that spin really, really fast in a circle and spit the hay through those rollers. What those rollers do is crimp the hay, which squeezes the moisture out, which aids in the drying process. The big thing with disc binds is disc binds are high input and high output machines, meaning they handle a lot of hay in a very efficient manner. These machines handle really thick crops phenomenally, and they're designed to go much faster than your sickle bar or hay bind. I run our disc bind on a 966, which is a 100 horsepower tractor. I run it at about 8 to 10 miles an hour, but I could probably pull it faster. Depending on your size of disc bind and the amount of horsepower you're pulling it with, you can pull them up to 15 miles an hour, and I've even seen guys pull them at 20 mile an hour, which is impressive. The only downfall to disc binds is they don't handle thin crops very well. For example, I do some custom work for my neighbors, and they have an old grass stand that just doesn't yield much anymore. And what happens is those discs and those blades are spinning really, really fast that it almost skips over some of the grass because there's just nothing there for those blades to catch, and it won't always leave a smooth cut. The second step in the hay process is drying it, and that's when we use this machine. This machine is called a tedder. This particular one is a Krone 4-star tedder, meaning it has 4 stars, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What this machine does is spread out the hay. As I drive along, those stars or baskets spin in circles and spit the hay out the back and spread it out. What spreading the hay out does is allow air to get through and underneath it, and for the sun to shine down and dry it out. This machine is really crucial for where I live. I live in southeastern PA, and in the summer we can get really hot summers, 80, 90 degrees, but darn near 100% humidity, which means there's a lot of moisture in the air, and we have to ted it out and let that sun and air blow through it. Otherwise, we are never going to get the hay dry, especially when we're making alfalfa. Alfalfa plants are already hard to dry down, and when you add humidity on top of that, it makes it a really, really difficult feat. That's why it's almost imperative that we ted out the hay every time we cut it. So if you're curious, I mow my hay in the afternoon between 12 o'clock and dark, okay? I will let it sit overnight so the hay can respirate, and then the following morning, before the dew burns off, I will ted it. Alfalfa is a really delicate plant because if you handle it too many times, you can bust the leaves off. So that's why I ted it in the morning when there's still some dew on it, so that it's not dry and crackly and I'm not throwing the leaves everywhere, because the leaves is where the protein and the feed quality is. After tedding, we wait for the hay to dry down. I try to stay away from tedding alfalfa more than once because, again, the more I ted it, the more the leaves are going to bust off. If it's grass hay, I can ted it as many times as I need to because it's just grass, there's no leaves on it. Alfalfa is a really difficult one to make, and that's why sometimes it can be really stressful for hay farmers to make quality hay. Once the hay is dry, it brings us to this machine right here. This is a hay rake. This particular rake is a Kuhn rotary rake, meaning this giant thing spins in a circle and throws the hay up against that curtain, and it leaves a nice, tall, fluffy windrow. There are other types of rakes out there like roller bars and V rakes or ground driven rakes, but I like this rake because I don't get any ash content in my hay. Ash content is basically dirt and rocks and foreign material from the ground that is raked up in the hay. Wheel rakes, since they are ground contact and ground driven rakes, they can pull up dirt and rocks into the windrows, and I just would rather stay away from that. Roller bar rakes are smaller and less efficient, but you can pick them up for really cheap and affordable prices, which makes them pretty popular rakes still to this day. As far as rotary rakes, they make them much bigger than this. This particular model, I believe, is 11 or 12 foot model, but they'll make single rotary rakes as small as 9 feet and as big as like 13 feet. Then you can graduate into your twin rotary rakes, and there's even like 3 and 4 and 5 or 6. I don't know. They make them really, really big nowadays. A lot of guys around here run twin rotary rakes, whether that be a bifold model or a double trailed model. When raking hay, specifically alfalfa, you still have the same principle you do when you're tedding. The more you handle it, the more leaf loss you're going to have. And the more leaf loss you have, the lower the feed value and the lower the sale value. Now we're ready to bale. There are 3 ways that you can bale hay, whether that be small squares, round bales, or big squares. For the sake of the video, we're going to talk about small squares because that's what I do, as you can see behind me. When baling hay, you want to make sure that the windrow is nice, big, and fluffy. So it goes back to raking. Make sure you rake a nice, big, consistent, fluffy row. That way you're keeping your baler fed consistently. A consistently fed baler will make a consistently sized bale. And with small bales, since you're making a lot of them, you want them nice, tight, and consistent. Otherwise, you can have problems when it comes to stacking, and it just doesn't look the prettiest. As you can see right here, we probably had a couple inconsistent bales and weird sizes and densities, and it just didn't stack the best. Again, the same principle goes for baling as it does raking, tedding, and mowing. The more you handle it, the more leaf loss you're gonna have. So when baling your hay, try not to bale your hay when it's crazy, crazy dry. If it is really, really, really dry, specifically alfalfa I'm talking, grass, again, it doesn't matter. But alfalfa, if it's really, really, really dry and crackly and leaves are just breaking off effortlessly, wait till a dew actually sets on the hay. The moisture content that you're looking for in hay is 10 to 20%. So if you've got alfalfa that might be like 10% laying out in the field, but it's super dry, wait till a dew sets on it. Bale when the dew is on it. You might pick up a couple points and you might get to 14, 15%, but you're not knocking leaves off. So those are the two big tips I would give you when making hay. Make sure you're keeping that baler fed full and consistent. I know the first time that I baled hay this year, I went super slow and my windrows weren't the biggest and our bales weren't the greatest looking, but by the end of the year, by the end of the season, the bales that I was creating were much more uniform, much tighter, and that's because I was raking windrows bigger, more consistently, and I was running that baler a lot faster and keeping it fed consistently. It seemed like I was running too fast, but that's how they're designed to be ran. You got to keep them fed full in order to keep a consistent bale. Round baler is a little bit different. Big balers, I really never ran a big baler, so I couldn't tell you anything about that. Sorry. And that's how you make hay. There's a lot of steps that go into making hay, as you saw, and I tried to make it as simple as I could. I could have gone into more detail, but I thought I'd spare you my rambling. When a farmer makes a good quality cutting of hay, he can stand back and look at that and say, that felt good. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're in the southeastern PA region and you were looking for hay, I got hay for sale, email me. My email is down below and I do deliver. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed and hit that like button if you learned something in this video. Thank you so much, guys, for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.